we're probably going to all be destroyed by an asteroid. You probably knew that already. They have been entering our atmosphere for a long, long time. You may remember this one from Russia last year. All right, so that's just one example, and this has been happening all over the place. Russian talk radio sounds really terrible, by the way. But we're just a matter of time away from this. All right, so that's from the movie Deep Impact. Remember that came out like the same week that Armageddon came out? They had 2 asteroid movies. That's the much better one, in my humble opinion. But don't worry about asteroids, people, because the UN is on it, because they're so good at everything, aren't they? The Special Political and Decolonization Committee is welcoming the idea of setting up a series of groups to act as a warning system. They're going to deal with issues related to decolonization, human rights, peacekeeping, outer space, atomic radiation, and more. The UN literally can't do anything on Earth, but apparently we're going to be able to do things off planet. And they also have an Office for Outer Space Affairs. And let's look at the international mechanism which they've set up to deal with asteroids. The International Asteroid Warning Network comprises of a wide spectrum of organizations for discovering, monitoring, and characterizing potential hazardous near-Earth objects. It will recommend criteria for notification of an emergency impact threat and to study and plan response activities. Take it away, Dylan.
Here's the Space Mission Planning Advisory Group statement. The main objective of this group to be established would be to lay out the framework, timeline, and options for initiating and executing space mission response activities.
Okay.
The Rubin report.
The Rubin report.
There you
It
go.
said it. I had to read the whole thing.
All right. So look, the UN does not do much of any. They do some good stuff with feeding people, but there's so much. So they do some good
Stupid,
stuff.
hungry people.
No. I'm saying that's good. They do some good stuff, but so much of what they do is just bureaucratic nonsense. We still have people being slaughtered in Syria, and nothing's really changing. So is there any chance that this group of people in suits and ties and bureaucrats and technocrats can sit down and figure out a problem as big as when an asteroid is going to destroy Earth?
Well, I think the truth is that there are space agencies across the world, and those space agencies are not unified. And the hope would be that if there were an impending threat, that one of the space agencies, I don't think that the UN, that this organization is probably going to be the go-to for monitoring of near-Earth impacts, right? They're not going to be monitoring asteroids or meteors very closely. I know that there was some talk about raising enough money to put out a telescope specifically for that, but I think that there are organizations that are better equipped to do that, so long as we don't continue to defund them.
Right.
The problem is those organizations, NASA is an American organization. You have the Russian Space Agency. We've shown that partnerships work very well. We no longer have shuttles, so we now ride the Soyuz capsule to get up to the International Space Station.
Right, isn't that, so people don't really realize this. The Russians actually now have to take us, right, to the International Space Station. We used to go, we don't do that part
until kind of a private space company, perhaps SpaceX or Virgin Galactic, can put together a rocket that's not just delivering payload, but can actually deliver humans. We're relying on the Russians now in order to get up to the ISS. So I think the issue here is that we are a globe. We have a global society. If an asteroid is going to impact Earth ultimately, and that is a legitimate possibility, we have to have a plan in place, and relying on any one individual nation to play Big Brother may not be the best way to do it. So whether it's the UN or another global organization, don't get me wrong, we don't have a good track record of playing nice with other countries, but I think that it is important for us to be able to, maybe it sounds like hippy-dippy shit, but to be able to band together and work together to prevent catastrophe.
Right, and that's my point. The UN doesn't really work well together to prevent things that are happening on Earth. So is there any chance we could come together and, build some sort of super laser?
Is that the right question, though? Is the right question, is there not a better option?
Pick a question, give me an answer.
There's a couple of subtextual things that are at work here. First of all, recently the Japanese Space Administration, and I don't remember what they're called, redid some math on a meteor that the US had said was not going to impact Earth in 2032, and said, we think it's a lot more likely than you do. And that started to create the sense that there is a need for greater communication between international space agencies. But moreover, this, I think. We as a species have been widely and largely distracted by fantasies of apocalypse since the beginning of organized governance. The sense that things are going to end soon keeps people distracted from solving large societal problems. And these societal problems are caused by economic influences far more than by any force of nature. And economic influences are purely abstract. I mean, money doesn't really exist. It's just a sort of an agreed upon abstraction of value.
I just watched Zeitgeist, the movie, so I'm on board that.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that someone watched that. That sounds like I had something to do with it, doesn't it?
Did you get your
It's a ringing endorsement there.
So we're dealing with the apocalyptic fantasy of modern America isn't that 7 horsemen, 5 horsemen, 3 horsemen, however many horsemen are supposed to come. That's not going to happen, and the zombie guy isn't going to come. Now we have a scientific apocalypse fantasy, and that all sort of frees us of responsibility for things like we're making the Pacific Ocean radioactive. Don't worry about it. A meteorite is going to come in 2032. We've got people starving all over the wealthiest nation in history. Don't worry about it. We're all going to die in a couple of years. We can't really solve all those problems in that much time. And my feeling is what we should do, and again, it may sound hippy-dippy, is set about joining together to solve human problems where we can, as we can, for the good of humanity. And then if there is a sudden horrific death to everything that we know, that can just come as a happy surprise.
Right, then we did the best we could.
I think those are some really, really good points. I think the one thing that I would add to that is that it doesn't have to be an either-or scenario. But within a certain organization, perhaps it does. Maybe the UN obviously doesn't have the organizational skills or the manpower to even address some of the humanitarian crises that they were first banded together to be able to address. So maybe this is better left not in the hands of the UN, but of some sort of coalition of the existing space agencies across
Elon Musk.
The UN can serve perhaps as a bridging mechanism between them.
They may not even need to. There may be some sort of treaty that could be established amongst the different space agencies. We already see that fundamentally the scientists who work there are interested in preventing catastrophe and in bettering the lives of everybody on the globe through space exploration. They all have a common goal there, which is to learn as much about the cosmos as we can in order to help us more here on Earth. And you already see so many kind of international coalitions that are forming to try and get people to Mars, to try and get people back to the moon, to try and get people, as we were just saying, to the ISS. Why couldn't there be some sort of asteroid watch coalition that was presented between all of those different organizations?
Yeah, so is part of the problem here also that we go, as you're saying, we go from human crisis to human crisis. Remember when everyone thought Y2K was going to end the world, right? Then 2 years ago, or was it last year? What year was it? I guess 2012, we thought the Mayan thing was going to rule the world. So we keep
Nobody legitimately thought that.
There was one guy.
Nobody who read a book really thought that. No.
I thought one person did. But really, when these types of things come up and then nothing happens, and everyone always thinks every other year, the Antichrist is coming and that whole thing, that when we actually have something that legitimately could do it, like an asteroid, we can't really band together because we've had these sort of cry wolf moments.
Well, also, I think even with things like asteroids, we are crying wolf. I mean, you see the same thing. There's a difference between legitimate threats and illegitimate threats. Is Satan going to come to Earth? No.
Won't he be riding an asteroid? Isn't that what they would say?
Is there going to be a zombie apocalypse? No. But when people get scared about swine flu or bird flu, it's more approaching a legitimate fear. Of course, though, there's so much fear-mongering in the media that even swine flu and bird flu weren't legitimate fears for some sort of cataclysmic event.
Right.
And so I think what it's really about is understanding the data, understanding scale, and being able to know the difference between a legitimate risk and a risk that has been blown out of proportion by the media.
That's exactly right.
Bring us home again.
Humans love drama. We live for drama. We remember the exciting moments and we seek out the exciting moments. And at this point, we have the most powerful technology for information and education that has ever been available to us. And instead, all we are using it for is titillation of the drama impulse. So, news stations, the purported mainstream news, and I'm using the term so loosely, are in the business of selling Xanax. Because that's their sponsor. And the human mind is hardwired so that if you're in the forest foraging for food and there's a fuzzy rabbit you might be able to eat, you look at the rabbit because it's moving. But then if there's a bear that might kill you, your focus is on the bear.
Yeah.
It's got to be on the bear until the bear is gone. And all the news does now is say, look at the bear, buy Xanax. Look at the bear, buy Xanax. That's all it does.
Hey guys, the Rubin Report's brought to you by Coupaw.com. They have up to 75% off pet treats, chews, toys, and more. And if you use code RR, you can get another 20%. That's a lot of percentage right there. I can't do that kind of math. The link is right down below, Coupaw.com, code RR.